grew up in interior Alaska. My folks were kind of like back to the land hippies. They started homestead in the late 60s, early 70s. And so my brothers and I were raised, with a real organic, back to the land vibe. We had a fish wheel on the Copper River so we could catch all of our salmon, in that concentrated period of time. My dad was a big game guide, so we ate a lot of Dall sheep and caribou and moose growing up. And then eventually we moved to another coastal town. And then I kind of found my inspiration in the outdoor adventure community. It wasn't really a community. There were just a few people that, do ice climbing and mountaineering and kayaking. But so I've been for about the last dozen years or so, exploring far and afield with these things, covered now thousands and thousands of, roadless miles with a fat bike. I assume that we're going to wrap this around into what's your dietary history. And, so for a lot of, that time, I kind of got captured by the mainstream, like this is how you eat when you do this. And about 3.5 years ago, I just started getting fatter and fatter, sicker and sicker, sorer and sorer, and then finally got some blood work done and found, that I met, nobody used the term metabolic syndrome, but, when I started doing my own research, I was like, holy crap, look at my blood panel. I got each of these symptoms. So that's what really kicked me in the seat of the pants to try to figure out a solution to be able to continue to do the things I love to do, which is wilderness adventure and, outdoor recreation, I guess.
You said you grew up kind of hippie or kind of thing, but eating a lot of, wild game and that type of stuff. And then you got convinced to try the dietary recommendations, apparently. What did that consist? What did that look like for you? Your diet, the diet that got you sick, what did it look like?
Yeah. Well, I kind of have a hunch that I'm particularly sensitive to, the standard American diet. But because I would still consume, the quote unquote health food, but, that was like high grain vegetables and, I never completely omitted meat, but especially on these wilderness trips where your metabolism is ramped up and you're working hard and you're pouring sweat every day and going to bed often really cold and shivering. And, it's like, it's kind of, extreme physiological state you go into. Lots of just garbage, like Snickers bars and those energy blocks and, things that I knew on some level from my hippie mama, that like, this isn't good food, but I got sold on this idea that you always need to be spiking, you're keeping your blood sugar levels topped off. So my whole day would just consist of eating on those trips. And I really kind of thought that there was no alternative. I thought that was the only way. When I first heard about intermittent fasting, I just, it seemed ludicrous to me that would be something that people could actually do in a real world context. And now I completely changed, my mind on that.
Well, let's talk about that. You do your own blood, you realize you've got metabolic syndrome. So what happens at that point?
It was really challenging. I actually was in a state of deep depression, I would say, for about 3 or 4 months, because I kind of thought that I was going to continue to, like, one of the big bummers beyond seeing all those, metabolic markers, dysfunction markers, was that my knee just continued to get progressively more and more achy. And I'd had, an injury years before, and the swelling was, it was noticeable, I could see it. And so I really thought that, I considered myself to be pretty young at 45, that I was going to have to, or maybe 44, that I was going to just have to stop doing this sort of stuff. And there was a handful of little nuggets on the internet that started me down this pathway of, thinking that low carb might have some answers. And then what was really interesting is that there was a Native American guy from the Southwest, and he gave a presentation on, he called it neurodecolonization. And it was about, breaking the chains of colonial thinking in your mind. And it doesn't matter if you're Native American or, white or whatever, that we each have these, things that we've been conditioned by in our contemporary society. And he had, for him, it wasn't this esoteric thing. It was like, here's a recipe to follow to break yourself of this. And it was, ancestral diet and intermittent fasting. And it was at this time when I had a few other pieces of this information, and the way he succinctly put it, it was like the mic was dropped. I was like, holy shit, there's something here. And then I found people like you and Barry, and, like the internet floodgates just started opening. And and I committed. That was a big thing. Like at first, I didn't kind of realize that some of, being in a ketogenic state was binary. So I was like, oh, I'll eat some low carb stuff. And I was kind of like dancing around the edges. But then I just was like committed. And holy crap, the difference was profound.
Describe it if you don't mind. How did it go different? I mean, improvements in knee pain, improvements in overall health. What was going on?
Right off the bat, just started seeing weight loss like I hadn't seen before. I'd always kind of tried to keep that under control and had no, appreciable impact. In fact, I think every year I just was getting, a couple pounds heavier. And so, really kind of blown away by those first few, what everybody says, those first few water weight pounds, whatever. I was like, whoa, that's impressive. And then my knees started hurting a lot less. And then the more that I zeroed in on it, the more clear-headed I became, and I wasn't thinking about my blood panel at that time. In fact, I was a little bit worried. I was like, oh my gosh, is this going to make things worse? I was getting quite a bit of pushback from my inner circle community of friends, thought that I was being nuts, but I just stuck to it. And then, 2 years later, I went back and got the blood work done again. And it was a complete, reversal on all those metabolic markers. And then I even did a hormone panel and found that, everything was just like stellar. So it was pretty profound, I hear all of the stories, that, you promote where people have like serious autoimmune disease. And, I don't think that my story is profound in that sense. Like people are resolving, clearly very, much more serious issues than I am, but mine is mine. And it feels very wonderful to have had regained health and to feel like I have a new lease. I don't know if it's going to be 60 or 70 when I'll be like, okay, rein it in on doing these wilderness trips, but that's a hell of a lot better than, 45.